He was the intelligent, funny, and kind protagonist of one of the best TV series of all time and the most beloved army physician on television. Hawkeye Pierce, brilliantly portrayed by Alda, was really a guy battling an uphill battle, not only with the on-screen horrors of war, but with the network and creative forces that allowed MASH to exist. The 11 seasons of MASH were a cultural phenomenon, not only a source of amusement. However, viewers should not assume that Alda's journey was without its bumps. He battled network executives, defended artistic integrity, and battled creative decisions that, in his opinion, compromised the show's central message behind the scenes. And now we're going to show you the 5 things that Alda detested the most about creating MASH. Plus, we'll explain why his fights were just as crucial as the ones in the 4077. Laugh track warfare, competing for sincerity. Maybe Alda was most irritated by the network's determination to utilize a laugh track. Alda thought the forced laughter was disrespectful and improper for a presentation about human misery, death, and conflict. According to Alda, we were concerned that people could find it amusing to mock those who were suffering. The laugh track embodied all that he hated about how television had a habit of assuming too little about its audience's intelligence. CBS brass was adamant that the program couldn't be a comedy without the pre-recorded gags. Creator Larry Gelbart and Alda were adamantly opposed to this order. According to Gelbart, the laugh track was the main point of contention between us and the network. It was said that the average American doesn't have the intelligence to recognize a good joke. They achieved a compromise, which was a tiny victory. No laugh track during operating room sequences. Nonetheless, Alda persisted in her resistance all through the series. International airings of MASH, especially on the BBC, frequently saw the laugh track cut out, highlighting the show's potential without the use of artificial prompts. The network's mistrust of the content and the intelligence of the viewers was reinforced for Alda with each scripted joke. The character trap. Hawkeye's legacy of limitations. The audience's expectations placed more and more limitations on Alda's ability to realize his vision for Hawkeye as MASH progressed. In the first few seasons, Hawkeye was shown as a charming renegade, a physician who broke the rules and had a soft spot for women, yet his irreverence belied his true compassion. With increasing creative freedom, Alda wished to delve more deeply into the impact of war on Hawkeye's character, his vulnerabilities, and the ramifications of his actions. Fans' expectations were not always matched by this progression, though. In addition to his wit, Alda said, she was constantly trying to find ways to highlight his fragility. Striking a balance between established qualities and the growth that a long-running series required was no easy feat. As Hawkeye grew darker and more introverted in subsequent seasons, this friction became more apparent. Hawkeye, unlike the witty surgeon from earlier episodes, was shown in the series finale coping with severe psychological damage. There was a personal as well as a creative barrier for Alda. He was afraid of becoming typecast after doing the same role for more than 10 years. Masha Phenomenon's success also ensnared him in a prison of expectations that would haunt him for decades. The importance of maintaining a low network interference level. A bigger issue existed, and the laugh track was only a sign of it. There is persistent pressure from the network to keep things light and steer clear of serious topics. The bosses at CBS were afraid of the more experimental episodes and would rather have a simple comedy than one that skillfully combined comedy and sorrow. Much pushback from the networks was heard in episodes like Abyssinia Henry, in which the beloved character Henry Blake passed away. Those in charge were skeptical of more experimental episodes like The Interview because they preferred the more traditional format of sitcoms. Defending the show's creative integrity became an ongoing battle for Alda, as he took on more and more writing and directing duties. he held the view that tragic events could also be humorous, and that the former served to lighten the mood, while the latter provided context for the former. According to Alda, the comedic timing had to match the level of seriousness in order to make it tolerable. The network's desire for lighter fare and less serious content seemed like a rejection of the show's higher meaning. 11 years of relentless grind. Alda endured the hardships of producing a popular series for more than 10 years, while viewers watched polished episodes. Exhaustion was a major consequence of his demanding schedule and his responsibilities as an actor, writer, and director. Instead of merely reciting lines, Alda was actively involved in developing the storyline, penning screenplays, and directing episodes of the show. Longer days and more responsibility were ahead. Another source of tension was the travel time between his residence on the East Coast and the studios in Los Angeles. The pressure to maintain the show's freshness after all these years was maybe even more difficult. After more than a decade on screen, how does one give a character fresh life? Refreshing it is a challenge. You have to dig deeper, Alda thought to herself. It was emotionally taxing and creatively satisfying to constantly innovate while keeping the show's essential identity. The continual worry that the show will become boring was a major cause of stress for someone as dedicated to excellence as Alda. His personal artistic standards and the show's history were weighed down by each screenplay. The tensions of conflict, facing the night on a daily basis. The mental and emotional toll of being engrossed in a fictional conflict for 11 years was something that many spectators failed to recognize. The constant exposure to topics of mortality and pain became a hardship for Alda, whose compassionate disposition was widely recognized. MASH fearlessly depicted the human toll of combat. There was frequent depiction of injured soldiers, deaths, and psychological agony in the episodes. These subjects were made more bearable by humor, but the players had to emotionally immerse themselves in this milieu every day. As Alda pointed out, war is terrible, but sometimes the only way to make it palatable is with comedy. But in order to make that torment palatable for viewers, we had to live through it, discover reality in the absurdity and misery of war. How could an actor keep their heart and soul into a role for more than a decade without suffering some kind of burnout? Regarding Alda, obviously, the answer was negative. He became emotionally drained from his MASH experience due in large part to the continual exposure to themes of death and pain. Did he really think it was worth risking his mental health to help millions of viewers see the reality of war? Complicated legacy of a legendary TV host. The multifaceted reality of Alda's relationship with MASH exposes the brilliance of one of television's finest works. He wasn't inherently ungrateful when he hated specific parts. It was born out of a strong desire to excel, which at times clashed with the business realities of television. In the end, he fought for the show's essence in his struggles against laugh tracks, network meddling, creative limits, and frustrating demands. Because of his dogged determination, MASH was able to transcend the status of a typical sitcom. As a cultural classic that revolutionized television's approach to heavy themes, MASH lives on in our memories today. Thanks in large part to Alda's unwavering vision, the show manages to mix comedy and drama, finding light in sadness while never downplaying the severity of pain. Regardless of the challenges and setbacks, Alda has always been appreciative of the chance MASH gave her. The show provided him with an outlet to delve into meaningful issues, develop as an artist, and share stories with a massive audience. Frequently, it was Alda's distaste for MASH that drove him to improve the show. His fights pertained to more than simply creative vision. They encompassed the age-old conflict between business and art that has defined television.